Howdy, Devin Rose, Lionheart Catholic. Wanted to give you an update on the central bank digital currency, also called the CBDC. There's been a sort of central bank to, big bank test of this, but there's not yet a retail CBDC. So a retail one would be one that you and I would use. It would replace, for example, our dollar that we use now, and instead it would be the central bank digital currency. They would control it. They could control how you spend your money. If you have a bad social credit score, you've not been a good environmental citizen, they could stop you from spending money in various ways. It's the Orwellian nightmare. So we don't have that yet, thankfully. There's big questions about whether we ever can have it. More on that in a second. But I was watching a video. It's from a guy named Maneco64. He's a British YouTuber, does stuff on finance. And then he was interviewing a guy. And that video was looked at by a guy named Francis Hunt, who's the market sniper. And they basically brainstormed one way that a central bank digital currency could happen. So follow me on this. The debt levels for our entire world economy are way too high. And that goes for governments, it goes for corporations, and even personal indebtedness, but that's not the most important thing. The bigger thing is corporations and the governments. Well, effectively what they could do is they set up the new central bank digital currency system. But they have a throttle or bottleneck choke point where they only let certain monies and certain debts through. Okay, so if you're poor, you have less than $5,000 in your bank account, whatever, then you just go on through. But if you have, let's say your net worth's $100,000, well, that all just doesn't go through. Maybe there's a time lock on it, or maybe you get a certain amount through, meaning you had $100,000, and on the other side in the CBDC dollar, you get 10,000. We have to make everything equitable, right? You can see them doing this. Meanwhile, the government debts are wiped out when they go through, and even maybe the corporate debts are wiped out when they go through. So with the debt level becoming unsustainable, this reset that they've been talking about, how can they accomplish it? If you wipe out the debts, the debt is a liability on one person's book, but it's an asset on the person who holds that debt, right? Who holds that bond and is maybe even earning interest. More on that in a second. But somehow you have to wipe out this debt because it reaches a point where it can't be paid. It can't even be financed, or refinanced. You can't even pay the interest on it. And we're heading that way. We're not there yet. But basically with this new system, then you're still going to have the old system with the old dollars, but you could begin devaluing those, okay? Where basically our current dollar, well, you're not going to want to use that because certain places aren't going to take it anymore. They won't take that dollar. They'll only take the CBDC dollar. Oh, and in the CBDC world, let's say you have a pension. Well, pension funds, a lot of them are effectively almost bankrupt. Well, we can't let all those pensioners, not get paid. So your pension, say, gets replaced with universal basic income in the CBDC world. So you can keep getting your measly pension in old dollars, which are devaluing, and so it's not worth as much. Or you could opt to take the CBDC, Universal Basic Income UBI. So you get all the pensioners through. This would be, they couldn't just do this. They could only do this under cover of an emergency, okay? But as we know, emergencies can happen, right? The sun's right in your eyes. Let me try to angle this way. Emergencies can happen. Maybe there's an emergency, we got to lock down the whole world and no one can go anywhere. Well, imagine something like that on an economic scale. Throw in some rioting, mass protests, throw in some famine, not enough food, and the system doesn't work. You know, you have a cascading liquidations of big banks, of governments defaulting. We have to do something, which is the rallying cry of every politician. You know, we better do something. And they use this then as this is my neighbor, as the cover and say, okay, right, we're gonna, all banks, you're gonna shut down, right? It's a bank holiday for the next week, 2 weeks. We're rolling out the CBDC system. It's an emergency measure. Download the app now. We have it ready. And we're going to if you download it right now, we're going to immediately deposit 1,000 emergency CBDC dollars into your app so that you can pay, you know, bills, and those are good for, you can go down to the food bank bread lines that the government set up with the military and get some food. So you can see how you bring people through. Meanwhile, though, people who have any amount of wealth, maybe small to medium-sized business owners, more on that in a second, they take a big haircut. Governments and corporations have their debt wiped out. What about your debt? What about your credit card and, let's say, mortgage debt? No, it can carry over. It'll carry over. This isn't going to be a debt jubilee for you. Maybe if you're the right color, you know, or you're the right something, but otherwise, no. So that's what would prevent you then from saying, I'm going to count on this, I'm going to go way into debt, because it'll all be forgiven in this reset debt jubilee. Very dangerous to do that, in my view. So this whole idea of a throttle or bottleneck choke point where they let certain things through and then they incentivize people to switch over, that was a really clever thing that Maneco64 interviewed this Swiss guy about. Now there's arguments against it though, namely for a retail CBDC, okay, that's for me and you to have the, you know, the central bank digital app and we get CBDC dollars. That effectively cuts out the US commercial banks. All these mostly junky banks that we use like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Chase. Well, that is a very powerful interest group, those U.S. commercial banks. Think of it like almost Wall Street. Matter of fact, they're the people who control Jerome Powell. So, you know, why haven't we had certain things thus far? Why do we have rates rising, etc.? Well, it's because Jerome Powell is not in the Davos MMT, you know, modern monetary theory CBDC camp. He's in the U.S. commercial banking interest camp. They don't want to be cut out of the system, and they're very powerful. And so they will probably block, at least as far as they can, a U.S. Retail CBDC. And the U.S. is the most important one. They're running CBDC tests in other countries. Those are less important because the U.S., with the world reserve currency being the dollar, and therefore the Federal Reserve, you know, as issuer of the dollar, being the most important central bank, in effect. So there's, you know, well, who's going to win? I don't know. You know, they tried to oust Jerome Powell many months ago. They knew that he wasn't in their back pocket. He managed to survive that, those attempts to, you know, pull a coup against him. But will that last forever? You know, I don't know. And what everyone agrees on is the debt is unsustainable. They're going to have to do something. And whatever they do is not going to be beneficial to me and you. So, you know, people ask me when I share this with them, what's the solution? What do you invest in, or what do you do in case this terrible scenario happens? Well, real assets, tangible assets, land, things you own outright, tools, animals, gold, silver, Bitcoin, right? Gold and Bitcoin are what you would call a bearer asset. They are not anyone's liability, and there's no counterparty risk with them. They are money and you own them. So they exist outside of, you know, whatever system they're going to try to pull in. Now, they might try to outlaw them or regulate them or tax them to, kingdom come, who knows. But you want to own something real. And the less debt you're in, the better, because, when you're in debt, then someone else has a control over you. And they can, say, well, but I have a fixed rate, mortgage on my house, or fixed rate land loan on my land. Well, it's fixed rate right now, but, it's emergency. And in emergency, unfortunately, we're going to have to do, eminent domain and force majeure, and you can keep it, but if you don't switch over to the CBDC system, unfortunately, on the old dollar system, your interest rate's going to go up by, a percentage point every month. And then, then we'll see how long you can last paying that. So when you're in debt, then someone has that control over you. So don't be in debt. When I was watching this video, and I'll link to the videos below, I had an interesting insight. The poor people and the people on welfare, and to a degree the pensioners, since they're, being paid by the system in this way. And no offense, I have lots of friends on different pensions. They are not a problem because they have to play ball, right? They're already, getting paid from the system, and therefore have to continue playing by the rules of the system to keep getting their income for a living. So they're not a problem. Who are the problem? Though the problem and the people that you have to watch out for and that they have to try to control are the small to medium business owners, small to medium size enterprises, and people that call it the middle class, middle upper class, people who have some sort of independent means, people who have income generating businesses. They can be independent. Those are the people who, notice those are the people who COVID hit, right, very hard. All the big, huge businesses like Walmart and Amazon, they were all essential, got to stay open. All the small to medium enterprises, they were the ones that were deemed non-essential and had to shut down. Not completely, but by and large. So similarly with this, you don't want people to be free and independent. You want them to be under your thumb. So these are the people then you want to take a big haircut when you move over to this small to medium, when you move over to the CBD system. I never realized that. I was always like, why? People would say, oh, this is all to gut the middle class, or to take a wealth transfer from the middle class and small to medium sized enterprises to big businesses. I didn't really understand that until watching this video. And then I realized, oh, I see. Yeah, because it's harder to control those people because they have that degree of independence. And many are entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs they're problem solvers, right? They had to think independently to even go into business. They're willing to take risk. So, we got to stop those people, basically. Harrison Bergeron style, if you've ever read that short story. If you've not, you should read it. It's unfortunately quite prescient as to what's happening now, and I think that Kurt Vonnegut wrote it, 60 years ago or so. So, what can we do about it, right? We're the grass that the elephants are fighting around, and we're getting trampled. And you can only do what you can do. I think taking those prudent steps to be as prepared as you can is the solution, so that no matter what happens, you are in a place to protect your family, provide for them, help your community. And so build up that strong community. Work to get out of debt. Work to build a business. A business is something that can generate a cash flow that provides a need. It's even better if that need is a local need, right? A tree trimming business, a tree cutting down business, you can't outsource to China. Someone's got to show up and cut down this tree. and it's right over my house, and it's dead, and if the wind blows, it's going to fall, and it's going to, you know, destroy the house. The septic business, the plumbing business, the roofing business, you know, all of these different things that it's hard for them to cancel, and they can't be outsourced. And then if you do have, you know, savings or whatnot, gold, silver, Bitcoin, this is not financial advice, obviously. Do your own research, make your own decisions. But things that exist outside of their system. What would happen to stocks, equities in this, if this transition were to occur? Hard to say. I think they would probably keep functioning. In that emergency time, with the uncertainty, the stock market would tank. But I think that you know, could retain ownership of those stocks in the new system. And then, of course, unencumbered by the massive debts, everything could go on a huge bull run, which would be another thing they would be pumping the CBDC world for. So this is Devin Rose, Lionheart Catholic. Thanks for watching. God bless.